Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. We are continuing with chapter number 15 of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Text number 2. Adhasya Chordhvam prarastastasya shakha guna pravraddha vishaya prabalaha adhascha mulanya anusantatani karmanu bandheni manushya loke. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So as we know, this is a technical chapter, and so far we are trying to understand this banyan tree, which is upside down. Why? Because it's a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Now, in this today's verse, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that the branches of this banyan tree, we have seen banyan tree, I assume all of you have seen, the branches go upward and they go downward also. So Krishna is using this analogy of this banyan tree to help us understand how we get entangled in fruitive activities, which means we are performing work to enjoy the fruits of those activities. So Krishna is explaining that these branches, they are going up and down and they're getting entangled. And that is what fruitive work does. It entangles us in this material world. So this banyan tree, it's nourished by the three modes of material nature, which is goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Krishna says that the twigs of this tree, they are like the objects of the senses, and the roots are bound to fruitive work. We have seen, if you have, done some gardening, or, you would have noticed that when you uproot a plant or whatever, then you see a lot of roots at the bottom, and they are like, intertwined, they are kind of entangled. If you try to, straighten, separate the roots, it's very, very difficult. So similarly, the roots, they are bound to fruitive works, and the lower branches, they manifest us different living entities like human beings, aquatics, animals, etc. And the upper branches, they are considered like higher forms of demigods. So Krishna says that this tree, banyan tree, it's nourished by the three modes of material nature, but not by water. Now, normally when we, have these trees in our backyard, front yard, or wherever in the garden, they all are nourished by water. So whenever the water is given to the roots, the whole tree gets nourished. But here, this banyan tree, which is describing us, in this material world, is nourished by the three modes of material nature. So wherever there are different modes, there as many living entities we will find. So Srila Prabhupada explains very nicely that because of these three modes of material nature, we develop different senses. And with these senses, we like to enjoy the sense objects. Now, this is a very, one has to be very, very careful, because it can lead to a lot of entanglement. Krishna, in the previous chapter, he explains that when the senses come in contact with sense objects, immediately there is attachment. And then there is a desire to obtain that object, whatever it may be. It may be a car, a phone, opposite sex, it could be anything. And then when the senses have come in contact with sense objects, there is attachment and desire is there. And when that desire is not fulfilled, it leads to anger. And anger leads to bewilderment of memory. Then intelligence is lost. And Krishna says, then a person falls down. So this is how powerful the senses are. We have to be very, very careful and be alert that we do not fall into this trap. So here, this tree that has been explained by Krishna, banyan tree, he says that with the senses, of course, living entities want to enjoy sense objects, but the tips of the branches, they are the senses, and these senses are attached to enjoying the sense objects. Now, Krishna is talking about subsidiary roots. Subsidiary roots, they are the attachments and aversions. And because of that, the byproduct is happiness or distress. There's suffering or there is sense enjoyment. So the real root, why is this banyan tree upside down, as we learned last Wednesday in the first verse, that it is a reflection. So when we see a reflection, say we see a tree that is reflected in the water, we will definitely see that the roots are up and the branches are down because it's a reflection. So Krishna is saying, because the roots are up in this perverted reflection, they are that real root is Brahmaloka, and Brahmaloka is considered to be the highest material planet. It's not a spiritual planet, it's the highest material planet. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvana loka punar avartino arjuna mam upetya tu kantaya punar janmana vidyate. What is punar janma? Next birth, reincarnation. So Krishna says, right from the highest material planet, which is Brahmaloka, down to the lowest, all are places of misery. So, but if someone comes to my planet, which is a spiritual planet, then one does not take birth again in this material world. One does not come down to this earthly planet. But from here, this material planet, it is easy to go back to the spiritual world than it is from Brahmaloka. Now, you may have noticed that we've been talking about this banyan tree since last Wednesday. It can be a little confusing, or this tree seems to be complicated, but this tree, this analogy is making us understand how we get entangled, like the roots are entangled. So how we get attracted to sense objects, and in the process we forget the real goal of life. The real goal of life is to break the cycle of birth and death that is going on perpetually. So Bhagavad Gita is giving us knowledge that can help us to become self-realized. Now, in verse number 3, Krishna says, it's very difficult to understand or even perceive this banyan tree. It's beyond our conception, but still he's giving us knowledge. And if we take guidance, especially from Srila Prabhupada, his purports give us very nice explanation for each translation. So Prabhupada also says, anything that is beyond our conception, we should accept authority. We should accept the word of authority, and authority is Krishna himself, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, this tree is so complicated, Krishna explains that it's difficult to understand the beginning and the end of this tree, or the foundation of this tree. But he is asking us to cut this tree down, which means we come out of this cycle of fruitive work. Let me do this and then I'm going to enjoy the fruits of this work, etc. That consciousness needs to be cleansed out. So with determination, Krishna says, we can cut this tree. This with the help of detachment. So now, if we want to detach ourselves from something, it'll be easier if we first attach ourselves to something superior or something higher, like the higher taste. So if, say, for instance, if we get attached to Krishna, to his instructions, to his knowledge, to his holy name, then automatically we'll get detached from this fruitive work, this banyan tree of fruitive work. And even though the roots of this tree are strong, the tree is strongly rooted, still Krishna says it can be cut. And when this banyan tree is cut, which means when our consciousness is cleared, then we will become free from illusion. What is the illusion we have, most people have in this world, is illusion that I am this body. First of all, I am, there is no knowledge about the spirit soul. It's just that I am this body. I am the controller. I'm the Lord of all I survey. And this material body is for sense enjoyment. These are all illusions. So with the help of knowledge, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, we can get rid of this false ego. We can get rid of this illusion and also get rid of false association. And the process is given to us in the Bhagavad Gita. So if we think that our goal in life should be to break the cycle and go to a place where there is permanent happiness, which is spiritual world, then Bhagavad Gita is the best book of knowledge to help us understand. So we can actually seek spiritual world through Bhagavad Gita. Now, if a person is entangled in this material tree or in this material world, then that person cannot see the other end, cannot understand the extension. And to be able to understand, best thing is to accept the words of the Supreme Lord. The scriptures tell us, very clearly who is the Supreme Lord, who is our real Supreme Father. Bhagavad Gita also tells us, where have we come from? Why are we suffering in this material world? Where should we go from here? And how to attain eternal happiness. No one likes, that the happiness has a beginning and there is an end, which means today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm not happy anymore. No one likes that situation. Everyone wants to be happy all the time. Now, all the time means eternally. So how can one be eternally happy? That is what Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna for us, that we need to, first of all, understand the basic foundation of Bhagavad Gita, which is I am not this body, not just theoretically, but also put it into practice. Find out, the origin with the help of devotees. Take on the knowledge which is being coming down to us from the Supreme Lord himself, because it is only this knowledge that can help us to become detached and, not get into the cycle of action and reaction. This has been going on for such a long time. We are performing actions and then we are facing the reactions, and there is no way coming out of it. So to understand this tree, that, this tree is actually a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, then we can understand here it is not the real thing. They call it the real thing. This is not the real thing. Happiness over here in the material world is just like that reflection. It is temporary, right? And then when we understand this, then we will be able to cut off this connection. Unfortunately, since many, many births, we have been conditioned to enjoying the senses. As soon as the child is born, what is the child taught? The child is given so many toys to play with, so much attention is given. It's all related to the body. It's all about teaching the child how to enjoy life. Now, there's nothing wrong in that, as long as we understand the purpose of human form of life. It is, not easy to learn how to be detached. There is constant practice necessary. And the first step to understand that is that we do mantra meditation. We chant the holy names on a daily basis. That will help us to understand the Bhagavad Gita more easily. So knowledge is required, but practice also is important. Why do I keep insisting on chanting every class, every Wednesdays? Because that is the basis of our spiritual lives. That when we hear these holy names, the sound vibrations, they help us to purify the heart. So when Krishna, in fact, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport of this verse that in association of devotees, in association of like-minded people, in association of spiritually minded people, we can cut down this tree. And, once we do that, then we will be happy all the time. It doesn't matter what the situation, whether there is, there is fame, infamy, happiness, distress, cold, heat, nothing is going to disturb us. We will be equipoised. We will be on a platform which is called Brahma Bhuta Prasan Atma, na shochati, na kangshati. We'll reach that Brahma Bhuta stage where there's full satisfaction. It doesn't matter what's happening in the material life, but still there is peace and happiness. There is eternal happiness in the heart. Why? Because one has understood the purpose of human form of life. Now, when we go to 18th chapter, verse number 66, Krishna will give us this formula, a formula of how we can be eternally happy. He says, Sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami ma suchaha. Ma suchaha is a promise. Do not fear. These are the words of Krishna. He says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. He says he will wipe out all our past sinful reactions. That means the balance will become zero. No more reactions to face. And he says that when all these sinful reactions of ours, the slate is clean, everything comes to zero, then we will reach that stage of Brahma Bhuta. So this is possible. When we reach that stage, there's going to be eternal happiness, right? So now that he's saying, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me, what does surrender mean? That's a very heavy word. What does it mean? Surrender means following the instructions given to us by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita. What does he want from us? He wants to relieve us of all the suffering. He wants us to remove all the suffering from our lives. He wants us to come back to his world, spiritual world, where there is eternal happiness. And when he says, when someone comes to my abode, they never come down again. So Krishna, he is the root of everything. Just like the banyan tree has the root, Krishna is the root of everything. In fact, we learned in chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajantima. He says, everything comes from me. Everything comes. So he is the root. Everything comes from Krishna. And to reach that place, to reach him, it's important to perform devotional service. And devotional service starts from hearing and chanting. Now, when we do this, when Krishna sees our sincere endeavors to do this mantra meditation on a daily basis, then he helps us, he favors us, he guides us, he shows us the way, because he's there in our hearts as the super soul, as the Paramatma. And that form is the Vishnu form, which is situated in the heart of all living entities. So the only way to come out of this material tree is to surrender to Krishna. Only then Krishna can help us to become detached. That is the formula for eternal happiness. Now, verse number 5, actually, Krishna talks about surrender. He says, anyone who has no false prestige, no illusion, no false association, no lust, no dualities, and is not bewildered, then one can understand that person is surrendered to the Lord. This is a process of surrender. These actually are the requirements for surrender. What are they? No false prestige, no illusion, no false association, no lust, no dualities, and no bewilderment. These are the 6 requirements. So then, first of all, one has to come to the stage of giving up pride. We see in this world, people are very proud of so many things. Some are proud of their beauty, wealth, that they are famous, or they are very knowledgeable. Sometimes there is pride when someone is renounced also. Oh, I am such a renounced person. That is also false pride, right? So first of all, it's important to get rid of this false pride. The pride, people are generally proud of even their achievements. They are proud of their family and possessions. And because of that false prestige, then the person starts thinking, I am greater than the others. That is definitely false prestige. Someone may say, I'm better educated, I have a better degree, or I'm more smart. I'm smarter than the others around me. This is all being puffed up. That is false pride. And this attitude cannot help one to surrender to the Lord. You see, we have seen this, we have noticed when a child is born, the child comes with nothing, right? And when a person dies, leaves the body, goes with nothing, goes empty-handed, right? So we come with nothing, we leave without anything. That means nothing actually belongs to us, because everything belongs to Krishna. That's his property. Only thing we are using everything given to us by the Lord. We are using it, so we need to use it in his service. That is devotional service, and that is surrender. So with the help of knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita, we can learn how to become a servant of the Lord. First of all, we cultivate knowledge. We try to understand, try to put it into practice, which means perform devotional service. And chanting the holy names is also devotional service. So when we start doing this, gradually we will start becoming humble. And humility will be one of our treasures. Srila Prabhupada explains in I think in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, in his purports, Srila Prabhupada explains what is humility. He says, I think it's in chapter 12, he says, one is, who is a humble person? One is not anxious to get the satisfaction of being honored by others. You see, that, I want respect from others. I want others to honor me. There is no anxiety that, that I want to feel satisfied that someone is honoring me. No. So one should come to that stage of humility where there is no false pride at all. The reason people fall into this trap of pride or being proud is because of illusion. It's not knowing what is the constitutional position of a living entity. Our constitutional position is eternal servant of the Lord. Jivera Swarup Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. Nityadas means eternal servant. That is our constitutional position. But because of illusion, because of being in Maya, people start thinking that I am the enjoyer, I am the controller, I am the master. And then things become very complicated, right? Sometimes we consider the land which is ours, we claim proprietorship, but it's important to give up this false claim to anything, because we come empty-handed and we have to go empty-handed. You all must have heard about Alexander the Great, who conquered so many areas, so many countries. He was not just Alexander, he was called Alexander the Great. He accumulated so many opulences. And before his death, he informed his ministers that after he dies, when they bury him, make sure that they make his hands coming out of the grave. He wants to show the whole world that even though I conquered so much, I went empty-handed. There's nothing that I could take with me. So if we take on this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, then we will understand that all these designations that we have, the bodily concept of life, that I am this color, I'm the citizen of this country, or I'm the CEO of the company, or whatever designation it may be, that will come off with the help of knowledge. Then person will realize, actually, I am a spirit soul. This material body is just like the garment that I'm wearing. It's a garment covering, body is covering the soul, just like this garment is covering my body. And that is, temporary. It will, like for instance, this garment is after a use for a couple of years, it's going to become useless. So also this body, after a couple of years, it's going to become useless. So imagine if we can remember all the time that I am a spirit soul and I'm meant to serve Krishna, then there will be no more bondage. There will be no more entanglement. In chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yagnarthat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha tad artham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. I'm sure you all must have noticed I quote this very often, this verse. Why? Because it's very, very important. Krishna says, work done as a sacrifice for me has to be performed, which means we need to perform all our activities in Krishna consciousness. Then there will be no bondage at all. Then a person can be liberated even while being in this body, in this material world. It's not that one becomes liberated after leaving this body. No. Liberation is a state of consciousness. It is understanding our real eternal position. I am a spirit soul. In chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna, Na jayate mriyate va kadachit, that there is no birth or death for the spirit soul. Na jayate, there's never, no birth, no death. It is ever existing, everlasting, it's always there. It's eternal. That is us, the true living entities. Unfortunately, because of, running around in this material world, trying to, make money and, take care of family and job, etc., we just, it's called a rat race. We just keep going, and we forget the real purpose of human form of life. You see, that's a difference between us and animals. Animals cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita. For them, they only do 4 things: eat, sleep, mate, and defend. These are the 4 things they know to do. They don't have philosophical intelligence to understand the purpose of human life. We, on the other hand, because we have this rare human form, we can understand and see how compassionate is Krishna. He spoke this Bhagavad Gita first 120 million years ago. And then because of passage of time, this knowledge was being lost. Yogo nashtaha parantapa, he tells Arjuna in chapter 4, that this knowledge was, getting destroyed. So 5,000 years ago, he re-spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna for our benefit. And it's still there. This is such a beautiful book. It's in fact called The Science of Self-Realization. It helps us to realize our own selves. So Bhagavad Gita is a very powerful book. It's, the Vedas are so vast. It is not possible to read all the 4 Vedas in one lifetime. So Krishna, he incarnated as Vyasadeva, and he gave the essence of the Vedas in Srimad Bhagavatam. You see those books at the back, that is Srimad Bhagavatam. And the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is the Bhagavad Gita, just 700 verses. And if one can somehow or the other understand them, meditate on them, put it into practice, then there is going to be eternal happiness even while being in this body. This is the formula for eternal happiness. Just understanding the basic foundation, I am not this body, understanding the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita, which is who is God, that is Krishna. Who are we, the spirit soul? So God, spirit soul, karma, material nature, and so God, spirit soul, material nature, karma, and eternal time. These are the 5 subject matters that are discussed in whole Bhagavad Gita, all the 18 chapters. So if somehow or the other we can understand these 5 topics, we will attain eternal happiness. And the very first step to eternal happiness is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Chanting is very, very powerful, very, very important. So if we can do that, then we will really be able to make good use of this material body. It is actually a bad bargain, but we can make a good use of this bad bargain, as Srila Prabhupada says. So you can see that there is the Maha Mantra that we chant after each class for a few minutes. So we'll do the same, and my humble request is that please you also chant with me the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for a few minutes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So you see, it's very, very simple. So I'm going to end now. If anyone has any questions or comments, you're welcome.